there are so many people in this world who are really, really confident, and they see themselves in a way that's almost overly positive. And then there's the extreme opposite end of the spectrum where some people who are just really brilliant in so many ways that shine all the time just can't see that for themselves. So it's important to balance that, right?
Welcome to Adapt or Die, the show where we hear real stories behind the biggest pivots. I am Andreas Pedersen, and you're listening to Power Without Permission miniseries, the same three acts breakdown, new raw stories designed to move all you listeners from challenge into action. Thank you so much for joining the podcast, Julie. You're a good friend. We work together. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a great opportunity. I haven't actually done a podcast before. So this is one of those great opportunities to put myself in a position that is a little different.
I have put you when you and I worked together, and you were absolutely the rock star, the rising rock star. This won't be the first time I put you into a new situation,
True.
and I guarantee you will nail it like every single time.
True. Well, I don't know about that, but I've grown to like being in situations that are just a little bit uncomfortable because it's where the window of opportunity lies to level it up.
I love it. Okay, the listeners clearly understand your level of courage here, but everything haven't always been as clear for you. You have done an amazing journey in the years I have known you, but walk me through those moments of sort of rediscovering yourself or feeling invisible, and then what was going on? Like, how did you get to that point of the level of awareness and the level of clarity you have on your life today compared to where you were just a few years ago?
There's more than one question there, and they're kind of big, but the question around feeling invisible is a good one for me. And I have to think for a second here because I'm such sort of a forward personality and I take up a lot of space everywhere I go that it's not often that I am invisible, but there have been moments, and they've been in business actually, never in my personal life where I felt truly invisible. And I would say it was earlier on in my career, and it was in a sales capacity where I can think of one meeting in particular. It was sort of the first really big meeting that I went into. And I was actually the sales leader at the time, sort of, that was my account. But throughout the entire meeting, it was everyone else that directed the meeting, really. And I didn't have a whole lot to say or value to bring. And I was sitting around the table thinking to myself, what's going on here, right? And it was my own insecurity. It wasn't that I didn't have the value to bring. It was that I didn't choose to put it out there. I didn't offer it up. And I really took a step back in that moment, surprised myself, and let other people carry the weight of that. And it was just around it being very new. Right. And walking away from that was very disappointing for me and myself. And I had to do a lot of reflection around, uh, wow, that surprised me. Why did they do that for somebody as outgoing and as bold as me? And it was sort of my team members that kind of saved me in that moment. But what do I need to do different next time? How do I set the stage differently for myself going into that? And that was a really, really early learning lesson for me around not being afraid to go into any situation really, and trusting yourself. Right? I mean, we're all in a space for a reason. You have to be well aware of why you're there. What is the value? And by the way, if you don't really bring value, you should not be there. You should remove yourself.
I hope the listeners really here understand how important it is what Julie's saying. So I just want to highlight it, Julie, for 2 seconds. You are a confident person. You're an outgoing person. You're very social. If people don't know you, they would never guess that you doubt anything in life. They would be like, she's the most confident. She just runs straight into the room and she will own it and deliver massive value.
Mhm.
I think it's so important that it doesn't matter how much confidence you have outwards, these thoughts still go on in everyone's mindset. So that was
Oh, yeah.
earlier in your career. Walk me through, have that kept happening, and how do you sort of manage that awareness in those moments?
So that scenario is something that extreme hasn't happened since then. No. But it is because I do manage it. And the way I do that is by thinking through prior to scenarios, situations I'm going where my insecurity, where my weakness or my self-doubt might come into play in those moments that are coming. Right. And so I go through that before I get into it. And I have a game plan, if you will, around what my approach is going to be for myself when I enter into that, if in fact I feel that way. And Yeah, there have been more moments around that where I had to really apply sort of my game plan going into it. But the more you do it, the less that happens, right? And then you're just sort of going on the fly. Um, but I want to go back to something that you said, Andreas, because it's really something that you know because you know me, but even I myself really found surprising, which is so often in my life, both personal and in my professional life, people have talked about, oh, yeah, you'll have no problem doing this, or you are super confident, right? And it's so interesting to me because inside, even though you do appear that way on the outside, it just isn't true. And I come to the belief because I do know how outgoing I am and I do know how, intentional that I am in places, that if I feel that way, then certainly, especially those who are lacking in that space, they have to be even more self-aware around that tendency, right, to go inward because it is something that you have to practice. It really is. We're not just born with it.
Tell me more about how you practice it and how you recommend the listeners to practice this. And you're an expert at this. Like I have witnessed you go into brand new areas in brand new roles with no experience, and you have found a way how to take action where others will be intimidated by the fear of the new thing.
I mean, I practice it. I practice it in everything that I do. It doesn't really matter what situation I go into. I put myself in a spot where where I'm kind of put on the spot. It's funny because, like, I go back a lot to when I was a youth, a child, and I remember feeling really nervous a lot in situations that were new for me. It didn't matter if I went to school for the first time or, first day in school or dance class or whatever it was. It was everything about that scenario was something I hadn't been in before. The people around me, even though I thrive on meeting new people, they weren't my people, right? My people were gone, and I didn't know how I would fare in this situation or how well I would do. But the more I went into those situations, the better I got at doing it. And so it became something that I realized, I don't want to say practice makes perfect, but you have to intentionally expose yourself to areas where you need growth. And you will absolutely find joy in doing it if you do it in all aspects of your life. Don't just apply it to business. Don't just apply it to your personal. But I mean, I can go in the grocery store and there might be a scenario where I wouldn't normally do something, and I'll just choose to go ahead and embrace it. So it's an intentional thing. It takes time to do it. But a part of even making yourself comfortable is making others around you comfortable. So that's another thing that you can do. You can take the pressure off yourself by giving attention to others in that space. And that, by the way, extends into even asking them for their input about things, right? You actually are somebody who has really been very, very much a leader in that space for me, reminding, the value in getting input and feedback from others. Uh, I think people are nervous about doing that because they're afraid of what they're going to hear. But I have found that actually um, it's very comforting. It's actually very comforting to be in a conversation with somebody and have them give you feedback because it's an opportunity to not expect perfectness and to expose yourself in a way that says, I get that I have a lot of growth here that's still needed. And it's comforting. It really is.
I think that's gold, and it's a perfect hack and a trick because if you don't feel 100% comfortable in the situation or know exactly what the other people think in the room, especially when you're dealing with customers,
Yeah.
that's worse. Like you don't know what you don't know, but it's better to take the uncomfortable feeling and ask open-ended questions and just
Yeah.
figure out what do they truly think and know. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about your backstory of, because I do think that your backstory have sort of forced you to really be exposed to new situations all the time, and by telling the listeners that, they will also understand, I think, the importance of putting yourself into situations where you have to take action.
Yeah. So I grew up in an environment which was pretty privileged in the sense that both my parents are very well educated and successful in their own space. My mother ended up choosing to stay home and raise my sister and I, and was very, very present in that, involved in everything from PTA at school to every single thing that we did. So she had a heavy influence in that way. And my father was a very good provider and is now a retired Marine general and has gone off to do I can't even tell you, almost 3 or 4 different careers, if you will, by choice that has been a turnaround CEO amongst other things, and I have been around really, really great leaders my entire life, and just since I was a small child. I mean, intelligent people that you can engage with and listening in as a fly on the wall, but also partaking, I can give you a million examples of different stories, where I was exposed very young to people who think out of the box and are visionaries and really just jump right in there and engage. That definitely framed me because it allowed me to want to partake and see the value, I guess, of seeing the value in those kinds of conversations, and being around that kind of person caused me to want more of that. But it also created a space where, yeah, I'm definitely more comfortable around those people, but it isn't necessarily because I've had more practice per se. That's the interesting thing for me. When I think about why I'm more comfortable around people that are, in the C-suite or, in politics and stuff like that, it's really because I realized as a child, without all of the, skepticism or hype built up, that these are just real people. They're literally like you and I, right? They just have some really interesting dialogue and they do things a little bit different in their life, but they are legitimately just like you and I. And there's nothing to be intimidated about and everything to get excited about engaging with them, because every time I was around them, I learned something new. And I really appreciate those conversations more. But for me, it also shaped me in the sense that, I kind of did, as I just explained to you, sat back and watched, right? I mean, I had conversations and stuff, but it was the people around me that really were in the know and engaging in these conversations and leading the way. And I think that often in life, if things around you are being taken care of, think of it like in terms of a parent and a child, right? Your child can apply themselves a lot more than they do, right? But the parent around them is doing it and doing it really, really well. So why would the kids step up? There's really nothing needed. And that's kind of what I did. And then as I grew older into life, I stepped into, jumped and dove right into really in the spaces that were mine, as a mother and really, running that household, etc. But in the professional world, I really didn't have experience doing a bunch of that. And it wasn't that I didn't believe that I could or I didn't have interest in it. It was almost like I forgot to assert myself in that space because it was just already done all the time around me. You know what I mean? So I had this great example, but yet in many ways I didn't intentionally apply it. So that was really an eye opener for me, and I would say recently, in the last, 8 to 10 years really, I've had to say, and in working with you, Andreas, you were one of the first to say to me, "Geez, when I talk to you, you are really spot on, but then we go into group environments, you're not always doing that. Why?" And it's like, God, I didn't even realize that. Why? Why am I not, Um, and it's sort of like assuming the back role, maybe a little bit like what I did when I went into one of those first sales calls, right? Just sort of went in there and assumed that these other heavy hitters around me were gonna carry the weight, right?
I want to point that there is an important lesson here, and I want to highlight it for the listener. Even though you have been around very like famous people in politics,
Yeah.
people that we all know the name of, um, you had this massive environment with leaders around you. How you got value out of that was by reflecting. And you are a very reflecting person. And when you are constantly reflecting and you're taking a proactive mindset, because some people that are more insecure or they don't know how to approach a new situation, they don't prep. Julie,
Mhm.
I want to point this out. It's super important. You are
Yeah.
prepping, you're proactive, you are confident, you know you can handle yourself, but you also reflect on how did we get here? What lessons can I take from my past that I can apply to this up and coming thing? And then you go into the meeting, you're confident, you lead it, whatever you do, but you reflect directly afterwards. You and I were often in meetings where there were like post-mortem phone calls, and the
Yeah.
reason is that you're constantly striving for more and more and more awareness. I don't think
Yeah.
most people do. So, yes, your network is extremely important, but in your case, you're not only leveraging it, you're maximizing the value you can get out of life, exposures, networks, all these things through reflections. And that's the point I really want to drive home, which you're an expert at. What comes to your mind when I say that?
Well, I'm intentional because I know what I want, and I said this earlier, but I mean, I really believe, and I will remove myself from meetings even today. If it's unclear why I'm there and I can't bring value, then I will leave and I'll go use my time and my airspace in other ways to drive my goals, right? Um, but the reverse of that is true. You should never go into any situation unless, especially in business, right? I mean, I love living in the moment. That's just a part of my personality as well. It's where some of the best things happen. But in business in general, I'm very clear about my why and the purpose behind it. So of course it takes time to think through what that is, but it's not just what I want. It's most often what the other person needs and wants, that I really consider because I deal a lot, of course, or I have the opportunity to engage with customers. And I am really, really a human-centric person. So I think often from their shoes, and then I sort of back out of that, right? There's always a reason why people are having a conversation. You should understand both sides. And if you're not putting the right thought into understanding even who you're engaging with before you're doing it, you're really doing everybody a disjustice, that's taking the time to do it. And then, of course, afterwards, there's always an opportunity to improve. It's like very rarely do you come out of a conversation and go, man, I wouldn't have changed a thing. I mean, that was great. And yes, but still, even though you might come away super jacked up and jazzed and be like, that it couldn't have gone better, it could have. 100% it could have gone better. There's always one thing you could do, right? So that's a chance to learn. And I love that sort of thing because again, it's another challenge, right? I mean, if you get so good at something that there's nothing left to really try for, I mean, what's the enjoyment in that, right? That's your telltale sign that it is time to get uncomfortable.
I love it. I want to point out one thing to the listeners here, or one more thing, and that is you hear the confidence, you hear how she is intentional, how she's proactive. And then I want to take us back to one meeting, Julie, especially with a large customer in a neighboring state to California. Uh, and there was one situation I want to point out, and that was it's not just a matter of where you're at from a mindset perspective, it's also physically how you carry yourself in the room. And one specific meeting, I remember we were meeting very high up people from a very large organization, and you did not sit down at the table. You sat behind everyone, and it was primarily men in the room. And I had to remind you, like, take space here. And what happened there? Walk us through that scenario, because I do think it's important for a lot of people to understand. It's not just mindset; it's also how you act in the moment physically.
Yeah. Well, part of it was, showing respect, wanting to make sure that the customer and then the most senior leadership, that everybody had a seat at the table. But it was my meeting. I mean, I drove the meeting, I set it up, I had the relationship, and I brought all of these senior leaders together, right? So it really was my space to essentially kick it off. But what happened in that moment was I walked in, noticing that there were more people than chairs at this table, and chose to continue to stand and allow everyone else to sit down. And you backed up and you said to me very just slightly, "You don't ever let anyone else have your seat at the table. You're leading this thing." And so that caused me to go, "Okay, he's right. I mean, if anyone should be sitting down here to drive this thing, it should be me."
It's you.
And in that moment, it wasn't even about like it just removed this feeling of I'm going to be respectful and allow others to have a seat. And instead, I realized eh, I'm failing to do my job. Like, I need to walk right in here and sit down and set the stage so that this thing can be a success. And you're not going to do it by standing in the corner, leaving everyone else at the table to fluster, right, and kick this thing off. So it was another one of those, you know, I gotcha moments that was sort of the inner me from way back when coming out, that first really uncomfortable, I feel invisible, let others do the job role. Those are our demons, and they tend to continue coming back out in life in different ways and aspects, and you need to catch them. But that's also why you need to be around people who help you catch them, because if you hadn't been there that day, wouldn't have I probably wouldn't have changed that behavior.
No, and this is one of that situation, Julie, is one out of many situations of why I actually ended up writing the book, which we're going to talk a little bit about here shortly, and I'm going to continue with your story here. The book is called Power Without Permission, and you're a co-author of it. We have
Yeah.
12 other co-authors, amazing, powerful women. It's small situations like that makes me get frustrated, because here
Yeah.
you have done all the work, you set up the meeting, you got all the executives in the room, and you don't even take the seat at the
I
table.
know.
And
Yeah.
even worse, like you need to sit at the corner of the or and edge of the table, be the boss and run that meeting. Um, it's a pattern I see a lot of women do, and I think it's because a lot of women are nurture or have a nurturing mentality, have a we mentality, while a lot of men, I'm stereotyping a little bit, it's not everyone, have an I mentality. And
Yeah.
I think it gets in the way sometime. What advice would you give the listeners so they don't do what you did there, and how have you changed since?
Yeah, it's such a good call out because it is a lot of, certainly what drives things for me is you're right. You go in the room and I said it myself. I was letting other people be comfortable and have a seat in a fashion of politeness. Um, what have I done? Intentionally made the decision, as I said, before I go into places. I actually even if I have big meetings or I'm giving a presentation, I want to see the room. I will ask for pictures and understand the lay of the room so that I know where I need to be. So, talk about planning it out, right? I do really well in an on the spot place, but in terms of things like that, because I know my natural tendencies, I aggressively counteract those and I over prepare before I go into those spots. But I mean, the short of it is I remind myself that it's being impolite in some ways for me to not take the lead and own that space that is mine to own. Right. As a leader, I have there's a level of responsibility that I have. And when I'm talking to people or I'm around people, I feel like it's a part of my responsibility to bring the most value possible in taking their time. So having a seat at the table is a piece of that. I can't deliver anything if I'm not really a part of that. So I'm intentional about doing it. Um, I I don't want to say I separate business and sort of my personal feelings, but the way I treat my family and my friends is different than how it is when I walk into a conference room and I'm about to drive some business conversation. So I'm aware of it before I go in, and I'm aware of it while I'm doing it. I'm intentional about it.
Gold. And the recommendation here to everyone is make sure that you take space both verbally and physically. And these smaller things matters. And Julie would have completely, you would have undermined yourself. I remember even getting a little pissed at you in the moment,
Yeah.
but it's like you would undermine yourself. And now we are like, this was your thing, and you need to own it, basically.
Well, it's funny 'cause, you don't think of it that way. Like, I never would have thought of it that way until it was called out. And, but you're really right. It's just something you have to I mean, look around you. Another way of doing this thing, of the people that are in the room around you that you view as leaders, right? What are they doing? Are they standing off in the corner? Probably not. So, that's another way of looking at it, right? You deserve that space.
Yeah. Absolutely. And back to awareness, you got to make sure you observe everyone, like you just said, Julie. Um, so I want to just, before we go into sort of the next segment here, I just want to wrap up. Think again about Julie's story, how she is super hyper aware. She's constantly reflecting. She's constantly preparing to make sure that she comes across and delivers with value. She also is very open to feedback. You seek feedback all the time and you constantly want to improve. And then the key golden rule here is action. You take action every single time, and you're going to get a little bit better every single time. But walk us through those. Remember how we repivoted your career into customer success away from sales, and how you almost was like Phoenix out of the ashes and had to rebirth yourself. Uh,
Yeah.
what was going on in your mind, in your confident mind versus your not so confident mind during that process of sort of rediscovering yourself?
Well, so I had been in sales ever since I started working, right? And was just really good at it. I'm still good at it. In fact, I sell all the time without selling. So people like me in their meetings if they're in sales, right? I just do it with a different title now. But basically, I had a conversation with you after I think it was about a year being at the company, and you were watching how I was selling, and I was the top salesperson for the company at the time, and we were at a growth stage. But one of the things the company was really looking to do was break down silos, right? And you said, and it's such a good call out that basically we need to always lead from the customer, from the outside in, and the true understanding there. And we need to work cross functionally and collaborate across the organization in order to really bridge that gap. And you said, Julie, I noticed that in your meetings, the way that you go to the meeting, you call in people from across the organization. Traditionally, salespeople tend to be more in silos and protective, right? They want to keep people out of it. And that is my personality. Maybe it's the way I was raised, right? But I have thought that for a very long time, when I'm going into something to get something done, I'm literally like, what tools do I have around me? We're gonna go get this thing done, and great things happen in numbers, right? It's just a fact. And you said, I think you should consider maybe taking on this other initiative. And it's customer experience. And I'm thinking, well, what is that exactly? Right. So I start to look into it, and you're like, Julie, you would really, you would be great at it because you're essentially doing this already. You're super customer centric. And I'm like, God, I'm sitting here like in my 40s, and I've been doing this my whole career, and I'm set, right? I make good money and all these things. This is the rebirthing, right? Do
You
I
were
do this now?
between you and I, you were really nervous about this.
Yeah, of course I was. Of course I was, because it was something, it literally, I mean, think about this, and anything could have happened, right? And now here I am. My resume is with this brand new thing. Who knows if I'm going to be great at it or not? Who knows what other opportunities are out there? I mean, there was just so many question marks. But instead of making a decision based on that fear factor or the what ifs, I instead decided to really dig and, pull the layers back around what it is that I would be doing. Because I have just found in life that, I mean, forget the title, it is completely irrelevant in the sense that unless it helps someone understand in an introduction what you're doing, right? It doesn't matter. It just does not matter. It matters what you do instead. So, did some of that research there, and then you rightfully so asked me to take basically a personality test. And I hadn't done one of those since like I was in college. And it was super interesting. And you came back and you're like, God, Julie, some of this is like, not surprising at all, right? I mean, you were off the charts in social and customer centricity, et cetera. But in terms of, coin driven and some of these things that are real drivers for people in sales, you were like at the bottom of the barrel. You just don't care. And it's true. Like what motivates me is different, right? I get energy off of engaging with people. And so when I thought about what the role was, I thought, this is essentially everything about sales that I love, right? And it eliminates all the stuff about it that I don't get into and dig. So I thought, let's do this thing. And it was the best decision professionally that I have ever done. And no joke. I can't even tell you how much I reflect on that and think, thank goodness that I was at that company with him as a leader, and he saw that and opened that as a door for me, and that I said yes to it. Right? I mean, because I could have said no. And you may not remember, but you know, there were conversations around our company at the time that was it the right thing to do to move me from where I was doing well to a new position, right? Was it best for the company?
I'm gonna correct one thing. I showed you the door. I did not open it for you. You opened it yourself and walked through yourself.
Yeah, maybe so. But I mean, it takes opportunities that are there. But yes, it's two-way swinging door.
What I want to point out here for the listeners, not only did you face, I mean, you were nervous about this. You were really nervous. You also had a personal life situation you were going through at the moment, meaning you did not have the level of stability you used to have and the
Great.
same life. You were rebirthing yourself as a phoenix in both at the same time, and
Yeah.
you did it. And I think for the listeners here, there are two aspects for all people who think that, oh, I can't do this or I don't know enough about something. Yeah, you absolutely can. You just have to trust it, go with it, and recategorize or fear into unfamiliar. You're just unfamiliar. And then the second thing, especially for leaders out there, male and female, I want to call out that look at people's brilliance and then put them into the positions where they will shine. And if you do that, you're going to have a company that is growing extremely fast. But if you just stick to this is the role description, this is the department, this is what it is, us versus them, guess what? None of these things will happen. So it's super important that you see that opportunity for your employees.
So two things. First response to that last comment, Andreas, is I could not agree with you more. As a mother with 4 children, one of the things I realized early on is that thing that your kid just will not stop doing.
Mhm.
That's their natural superpower. Just find a way, right? I mean, to allow them to really grow in that space in ways that it delivers positivity, because it's the stuff that you can't get rid of that is really where you shine. It's what you were born to be. And then the second thing I want to make sure I share with you is that I've thought back in my life, and I still do this a lot today, even thinking about where this might take me. But I genuinely cannot think of one scenario where I have really leveled up my game, like, game changer stuff. Not one. And it doesn't matter if it's personal or professional, where I wasn't really, really uncomfortable in order to get there. Right. And
So
and I'm talking
important.
about all kinds of uncomfortable.
If you
It doesn't matter if it's heartbreak or if it's nervousness or embarrassment. I mean, whatever. Right. I mean, true discomfort. And that was required. And so it's so true. And I said this earlier on, but I almost hunt out opportunities to be uncomfortable now because that's my time to rise again and leapfrog.
Yeah. It gets an addiction almost after a while. I hate to say it, but it is like that. In the beginning, when you don't dare to make a difference and dare to drive change, it stagnates you. But once you have taken micro actions, you get the reward. You felt uncomfortable, but you got the reward afterwards. You make bigger and bigger and bigger leap. And guess what? It's the same. Like people I talk to that are CEOs of large companies, founders run big private equity funds, set for life years ago, they all have the same mentality. Keep taking action, small as it
Yeah,
might be. Just do something and never ever let anxiety, doubt, or fear stop you. And I think,
totally.
Julie, especially with you, awareness, like they're all hyper, hyper, hyper aware, constant reflections, constant trying to move from emotional stagnation into logical thinking.
Yeah. But it's also why, I mean, but we do things all the time without really thinking about why we've done it. And we avoid things without even recognizing that we're avoiding it. It's also why it's important to reflect and ask others, invite them into your space to figure out what they see, because I guarantee you they will see you differently than you believe. And it's such a trip because there are so many people in this world who are really, really confident and they see themselves in a way that's almost overly positive. And then there's the extreme opposite end of the spectrum where some people who are just really brilliant in so many ways that shine all the time just can't see that for themselves. So it's important to balance that, right? But yeah, it's just one of those things where you have to really, I guess, intentionally expose yourself. Like I set a goal for myself every year, and more than one goal in more than one way. But one of the things that I do every year is I ask myself, what have I been avoiding? Because that's my uncomfortable. What have I been avoiding? And like 10 years ago, I found myself, even in sales, keep in mind, in sales, um, I found myself avoiding public speaking. And it was the weirdest thing to me, right? Because I love it, right? But I literally found a way for years to avoid big, huge, stand at the front, speak to huge audiences. I don't know how I did it, but I really, really wanted it apparently. And I finally just decided that's it, it's over. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to intentionally take on a speaking engagement that makes me really, really nervous. And I did it. It was at one of the large conventions that you're aware of, and I rose my hand and I said, I'm doing this." And I was so nervous about it. I mean, I knew about it like 9 months before it was gonna happen. I thought, "This is so stupid because 'cause you're gonna love this." And I did, and I've done it every year since then, and I love it.
I want to again promote the book here a little bit based on what you said, Power Without Permission. If this is landing with you, the listener, I highly recommend you to go to leadersadapt.com/book. Uh, Julie is telling her story. I put her in chapter right after my intro chapter on purpose because I wanted to show the listeners a confident person that take action, but still works with their awareness and there is still doubt creeping in. And like you just mentioned,
Yeah.
for those opportunities. And I think all the stories in the book are amazing. The whole book is a leadership book, a mindset book of how to move from the anxiety, the doubt, the insecure overachiever, imposter syndrome into someone like Julie who takes action and gets the results from it. Okay, let's go into rapid fire. Super short answers, very short questions. And first thing that come to your mind, Julie, and again, you said that this is something that will challenge you, so this is the part of the show. You're uncomfortable. Good, we can learn something. What's one belief you have retired?
That there are things I can't do.
I love that. That's short and precise. You can do anything you set your mind to, and that's the
Yeah, I
point.
mean, within physical constraints, I no longer believe that there's a space where I belong, and, if I work really hard, it could be here. I 100% feel the opposite now. I've retired that belief. I believe that, you should set your goals and sights out for something you feel is totally impossible because you will shock yourself and get it.
Love that. What's one micro ritual that you do before having a hard conversation with someone?
Oh, oh man. I really take the time to go inside my own mind and I have to ask myself why we're having it and why is it uncomfortable?
It is. What's a rule you broke and that gave you a better outcome?
I got a divorce. I hate to say it, but that is a big turning point in my life and that I chose not to do it for a lot of years because I viewed it as a rule that you don't break.
Finish the sentence. Power without permission means
You do what you know is possible and you don't wait for anyone to open the door for you to do it.
if you don't adapt, you.
Die.
Thank you. That was the promotion of the podcast.
Somebody else is gonna adapt around you, so you're gonna be a victim essentially to other people's decisions.
Thank you so much for joining this podcast. Julie, how can the listeners follow you? Where can they find you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, like most people, of course, and then as this book starts to come out, there'll be other opportunities, I know, Andres, through you and online, so forth.
Yeah, we're also launching a community, Power Without Permission community. And in there, we have all the co authors will come in. They will do monthly calls and help other, especially women, helping them through some of the mindset shifts that they have mastered and answer questions about the book. Julie, thank you so much. You always impress me, and this was something that I know that you were a little nervous about, and you did it. Yeah, thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you, Andres. It's always fun. Look, I would do this even if it weren't a webinar with you. You know I love to banter,
For
especially with you.
For all the other listeners out there, if this was inspiring for you, please go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You're helping another listeners discover this podcast, and maybe you're helping them create more awareness about themselves. And also in leadership, we adapt and thrive, or we don't survive. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much, Julie.